The London Underground has carried millions of commuters for over a century. Ever since the world's first underground railway opened in 1863 beneath the streets of Victorian London. But among the routine journeys and familiar stations, some passengers report something far stranger. Fleeting moments where the present seems to slip away. Imagine standing on a crowded platform when the person beside you suddenly isn't dressed for 2025, but for 1940. The height of the Blitz, when Londoners sheltered deep below the city to escape nightly bombings. The lights dim, the temperature drops, and the hum of an electric train fades into the distant thunder of explosions from September 1940. Hurried footsteps, voices swallowed by time. No ghosts, no hallucinations. Hundreds of witnesses describe the same impossible scenes. Fragments of London's past erupting into the present in stations such as Holborn, Aldwych, and Liverpool Street, each carrying their own buried history. No photographs, no recordings, no official investigation, only scattered testimonies, confused reports, and a mystery buried deep beneath the city's oldest tunnels, including the sealed chambers near King William Street, closed in 1900, and the wartime bunkers hidden beneath Down Street. What if these visions aren't illusions? What if the underground is not just a transport system, but a living timeline where history occasionally breaks through the surface? Tonight, we're not revisiting old tube legends or chasing ghost stories. We're tracing the blurred edges between London's present and its buried past, following eyewitness accounts, sealed tunnels, wartime shelters, and forgotten reports that align far too closely to ignore. Together, they suggest something far stranger than myth. The underground may not just remember history, it may be replaying it. And so, we begin. Millions of people ride the London Underground every day. Students rushing to class, office workers clutching coffee cups, tourists tracing coloured lines across station maps. Most step onto the platform without ever wondering what lies beneath the familiar tiles, the flickering lights, the rhythmic hum of passing trains. But sometimes, rarely, something shifts. Some describe it as a change in air pressure, a sudden hush, a tension, like the moment before a thunderstorm. And then, for a sliver of a second, the present dissolves. A commuter waiting at Victoria Station once claimed the man beside him was no longer dressed in modern clothes, but wore a soot-stained jacket and a fabric gas mask. The same style distributed during the 1940 Blitz, when Londoners crowded into stations like Liverpool Street and Bethnal Green to survive nightly bombings. Another described hearing the unmistakable crack of timber from somewhere deep in the tunnel. Sounds identical to the structural collapses recorded during the heavy bombing raids of September 1940, when central underground lines trembled under continuous strikes. Others swear they've seen Victorian workers walking along tracks that no longer exist, carrying lanterns whose flames flicker against walls built more than a century ago. Perhaps along sealed corridors near British Museum Station, closed in 1933, or the abandoned tunnels branching from King William Street, the system's first deep-level station, opened in 1890 and shut in 1900. Most people laugh these stories off. But the strange part is, these accounts are not isolated. They repeat, across stations, across decades, across witnesses with nothing in common. And when testimonies echo each other so precisely, it becomes harder to dismiss them. No bodies, no records, no physical evidence, just a pattern, whispers from another era, bleeding into the present. The London Underground is more than a transit system. It is a layered world built on tunnels carved by hand in the 1800s. Reinforced during the Blitz from 1940 to 1941, expanded through political upheaval, and scarred by the traumas of millions who once sheltered here. For generations, people have claimed strange experiences in these tunnels, moments where time seems to falter, where history refuses to stay buried, where the past feels close enough to touch. Tonight, we are stepping into this mystery, following the hidden timeline that threads beneath London, through the testimonies of those who swear they slipped into another century. What if these visions aren't hallucinations? What if they're not ghosts? What if, deep beneath London's streets, the past hasn't disappeared at all, but continues to move beside us, just out of sight? Beneath London's crowded streets lies a world shaped through danger, ambition, and generations of human struggle. To understand why strange encounters happen here, we must look at the origins of the tunnels themselves, because every brick, every beam, every hidden chamber carries traces of the past. In the 1860s, when the London Underground began construction, it was unlike anything the world had seen before. Work officially started around 1860, leading to the opening of the Metropolitan Railway in January 1863, the world's first subterranean railway. Thousands of Victorian labourers, known as navvies, worked in suffocating, dimly lit trenches, digging through thick clay, choking soot and unstable earth. Their tools were primitive: shovels, pickaxes, lanterns with fading flames. Tunnel collapses were common. Explosions occurred without warning. Many workers died where they stood, their stories buried in the soil they carved. Some of those earliest tunnels still exist today, sealed, silent, and untouched for more than a century. Maintenance workers occasionally pass these bricked-off entrances, knowing that behind them lie underground chambers no one has entered since the late 1800s, such as portions of the original King William Street tunnels, opened in 1890, closed in 1900. Decades later, during the Blitz of World War II, the underground transformed into a lifeline. Between 1940 and 1941, as bombs rained down from the night sky, thousands of Londoners descended into the tunnels seeking safety. Stations like Liverpool Street, Bethnal Green, Holborn, and Aldwych sheltered families huddling together on cold stone floors. Children slept beneath blankets, while parents whispered quiet reassurances to drown out the thunder above. Some nights, entire communities gathered in the underground, surviving solely because the tunnels shielded them from destruction. In several stations, births were recorded deep underground, new life entering the world while the city burned overhead. The walls, floors, and iron beams absorbed every moment of fear, hope, and desperation that passed through them. As the decades moved on, London expanded and the underground evolved. New lines were carved, old ones sealed, and forgotten corridors drifted into darkness. Down Street Station opened in 1907 and closed in 1932, was converted into a secret wartime bunker between 1941 and 1942, used by government officials and even Winston Churchill himself. Its narrow hallways remain frozen in time, filled with rusted equipment and wartime markings. Across the network, abandoned tunnels lie untouched, some halted mid-construction, tools still scattered where workers left them almost a century ago. Portions of the old post office railway, begun in 1927, remain sealed beneath the city, silent reminders of another era of underground innovation. Other sections contain platforms that once bustled with life, but now sit in total silence. Their posters peeling, clocks frozen, air unmoving. Aldwych Station, closed in 1994, still holds fragments of wartime museum storage and signage untouched since the 1940s. This underworld beneath London is not simply a transport system. It is a layered archive of human experience, built from sweat, fear, survival, and the countless stories of those who passed through its depths. If a place could hold memories, if walls could absorb emotion, if time could linger anywhere, it would be here, beneath London, in the shadowed tunnels of the underground. Long before these stories spread across newspapers and late-night conversations, they began quietly, shared in whispers between workers finishing night shifts or commuters unsure of what they had just seen. The London Underground has always been full of movement and noise, but the encounters people describe happen in the dead stillness between trains, in those rare moments when sound fades and the tunnels fall silent. One witness, a man returning home late from work, stood alone on a nearly empty platform at Holborn station, an active stop since its opening in 1906 and heavily used as a shelter during the Blitz. He described hearing a rumble approaching from the tunnel, deep, metallic, and heavy. Unlike the electric hum of modern trains that have run on these lines since the 1960s, it reminded him of a steam locomotive, the kind that vanished from London's underground after the early 20th century. As he listened, the air grew colder, the platform lights dimmed, flickering with a faint orange tint as if illuminated by gas lamps, reminiscent of the underground's earliest lighting in the late 1800s. Across the tracks, shapes began to emerge, not ghosts. He insisted they were too solid, too detailed. Families stood huddled together, men in wool coats, women clutching bundles, children wearing the simple, rugged clothing of the 1940s. Their faces held the unmistakable fear of war, as though they were sheltering from the Blitz once more. The very reality of 1940 to 41, when Central Line stations housed thousands nightly. The witness said they seemed unaware of him, focused only on an unseen threat above. And then, as suddenly as they appeared, they faded. The lights brightened. The cold lifted. The platform was empty again. He never returned to that station at night. Another account comes from a maintenance worker assigned to inspect an old service corridor near Liverpool Street station, one of the oldest and busiest hubs, first opened in 1874 and heavily bombed in 1940. These corridors are seldom used. Narrow, silent, their brick walls stained with age. He walked slowly, checking the cables overhead, when he noticed movement ahead. A man trudged forward, carrying a brass lantern whose flame flickered against the tunnel walls. The worker at first assumed it was a colleague from another team, But something was wrong. The man's clothing was not a modern uniform. His boots were heavy leather, caked in soot. His apron was thick, worn, and speckled with dust. He looked exactly like the Victorian labourers who dug the original deep-level tunnels during the 1890s. Workers who often built lines by hand before mechanised drilling existed. The maintenance worker called out. No answer. He raised his flashlight, the beam cutting through the corridor. But the lantern bearer walked farther ahead, straight toward a brick wall constructed more than a century ago during the early tunnelling expansions. And without turning, without slowing, he disappeared into the solid structure, as though the wall were a doorway to a different time. Engineers later examined the corridor. There were no openings, no hidden pathways, no loose bricks, just a sealed construction barrier from the 19th century. Yet the worker remained convinced of what he saw. He could still describe the lantern's glow. He could still smell the faint hint of coal smoke in the air, a smell long absent from London's electric-powered system. Others have reported equally unsettling moments. Several staff members on overnight shifts have described hearing announcements echoing through stations, messages delivered in clipped, old-fashioned accents. These voices announced trains that no longer existed, used terminology retired before the 1950s, and referred to platforms long since renumbered after mid-century renovations. One worker, stationed near a disused section of track, reported an announcement warning passengers to stand clear of the incoming train. But no such train was scheduled. No voice was broadcast from the station's control system. And checks later confirmed the speakers in that area were not even connected. A detail consistent with several other archived staff reports. Another chilling account came from a police officer patrolling a closed station, Bank Station, an area known for wartime damage and deep shelter use. He heard the sound of dozens of footsteps on the platform, steady, orderly, like a column of people moving in formation. Yet when he approached the platform edge, the space was empty. The footsteps continued behind him, echoing through the dark tunnel, even though no train had passed for hours. These testimonies share a strange consistency. They occur in areas with deep historical roots, where the underground once served as shelter, workplace, or wartime refuge. The details match the clothing, sounds, and equipment of past eras. Details difficult to invent, especially for witnesses with no historical background. What makes them most compelling is not the shock value, but the repetition. Different people, different years, different stations, but the same scenes, the same moments, the same impossible glimpses of London's past surfacing through the underground's concrete bones. In a place built on layers of history, these encounters feel less like hallucinations and more like moments where time briefly forgets its boundaries. When eyewitness accounts begin to echo one another across decades, across stations, and across generations, the question shifts from what did they see to a far more complex mystery. Why does the London Underground produce these encounters at all? Researchers, historians, physicists, and paranormal investigators have all explored the phenomenon, each offering explanations that reveal just how thin the line between memory and reality might be beneath the city. One of the most enduring ideas is the stone tape theory, first popularized in the 1960s by researcher T.C. Lethbridge. often referenced in discussions about old battlefields, historic prisons, and locations burdened by trauma. This theory proposes that moments of intense emotional energy, fear, pain, desperation, can imprint themselves onto the physical environment. Stone and brick, the very materials forming the underground's foundations, are believed to act as a recording medium. The Blitz shelters, packed with terrified families night after night between 1940 and 1941, would have created exactly the type of environment where such imprints could form. The Victorian tunnels, carved by men who faced constant danger in the 1860s and 1890s, may also hold layers of emotional residue. If the stone tape theory holds any truth, then the underground is less a transit system and more a vast archive of human experience, capable of replaying its memories when conditions align. But others point to a scientific explanation rooted in the physics of deep, enclosed environments. The underground is a maze of electrical lines, metal rails, transformers, and power conduits. These elements generate irregular electromagnetic fields, or EMFs. Studies from the 1980s and 1990s by neuroscientist Michael Persinger linked high EMF exposure to altered perception, triggering unusual sensory distortions such as shifts in vision, sudden chills, feelings of being watched, or faint auditory hallucinations. Some skeptics argue that EMF waves, bouncing unpredictably through tunnels and empty stations, could explain phantom sounds or fleeting shapes. But this theory has significant gaps. It cannot explain why multiple witnesses describe the same historical details. Clothing, accents, lanterns, and train sounds that precisely match specific eras. A more speculative, though increasingly discussed idea, is the quantum time echo hypothesis. Quantum theory suggests that time may not be as linear or rigid as it appears. Under rare conditions, energy fields or geometric structures could allow brief overlaps between past and present. A 2018 physics study on time symmetry and echo phenomena demonstrated how waves of information can rebound in unexpected ways. An idea some researchers believe might apply to locations with long, narrow, metallic structures. The underground, with its endless corridors, steel rails, electrical pulses, and unique air pressure cycles, could theoretically act as a waveguide for temporal distortions. In this hypothesis, witnesses are not seeing ghosts, but fragments of real historical moments, echoes of time, waves bouncing through the tunnel network. These glimpses would be short, disjointed, and non-interactive, matching countless eyewitness reports. Then there is the urban memory theory, a concept rooted in anthropology and sociology rather than physics. This theory suggests that cities with deep, turbulent histories, like London, develop layers of cultural memory. The underground, as both a shelter and a battleground of survival, becomes a vessel carrying the emotional weight of millions. These memories, according to the theory, manifest not as hauntings, but as symbolic impressions, visions shaped by collective memory rather than literal events. Some researchers even point to acoustic phenomena. Sound behaves strangely underground. Low-frequency vibrations can travel extraordinary distances through tunnels, creating illusions of voices, footsteps, or movement. Sealed tunnels, particularly those untouched for decades, can preserve and amplify echoes in ways that defy intuition, making old sounds seem alive again. But these scientific theories falter in the face of one troubling fact. None can fully explain why people report visual scenes with such accuracy. German wartime clothing, Victorian worker uniforms, lanterns, steam engine sounds. The details match historical records far too precisely for chance or imagination. The theories begin to feel less like answers and more like partial glimpses of something larger. Something that science acknowledges only in pieces. Something that resides in the tension between the physical world and the emotional one. Perhaps the underground is a place where multiple layers of history coexist, just close enough for their edges to blur. Perhaps certain stations, certain tunnels, certain atmospheric conditions allow those layers to overlap for a moment. And perhaps the people who witness these events are not imagining anything at all. They are simply standing in the right place at the right time when the past briefly slips into view. No single theory solves the mystery, but together they form a mosaic of possibilities that hint at a London far stranger, far deeper and far more connected to its past than most people ever imagine. Among all the strange events whispered through the underground, one stands above the rest. Not because it is the most dramatic, but because it was witnessed, confirmed, and investigated by professionals who had no reason to fabricate a story. In 2003, deep below the surface, a team of engineers was performing routine maintenance on a closed section of track near the disused platforms between Charing Cross and Embankment. Areas partially decommissioned in the late 1990s, but still accessible for engineering work. The power had been shut down. The rails were cold. No trains were scheduled anywhere near the area for hours. The only sounds should have been their own footsteps and the distant rattle of equipment. Yet without warning, an announcement echoed through the tunnel. It was unmistakably old, not digital, not the crisp audio of modern speakers, but a grainy, analog voice, crackling like a broadcast from several decades ago. Closer to the 1950s, PA systems once used on the Bakerloo and Northern lines. The message was brief but clear, a warning for passengers to stand back as an incoming train was approaching. The engineers froze. They knew the system was powered off. They knew no train was coming. And when they radioed the control room in confusion, the response made the moment even stranger. No announcement had been triggered. No transmission had been sent. And the speakers in that portion of the tunnel were not even connected to power. Some had been completely decommissioned in the 1980s. Even more unsettling. When they later reviewed the station logs, there was no record of any audio broadcast at the time the engineers heard the announcement. According to the system, nothing had happened. According to the men standing in that tunnel, something had. Several of them refused to work in that section again. This is not the only case of the underground producing impossible moments. Police officers patrolling empty platforms, particularly at Bank Station, known for its wartime damage and labyrinth of old corridors, have reported hearing trains arrive that never appeared. Not faint noises, but full arrivals, screeching brakes, opening doors, and the unmistakable shuffle of passengers stepping out. Maintenance workers have spoken of hearing footsteps behind them in sealed tunnels, only to find the corridors empty. Tunnels like those near the old King William Street route, closed since 1900. CCTV operators at stations such as Aldwych, which closed in 1994, have seen shadows moving across platforms where no passengers were present. Cleaning staff have described voices calling out from stairwells long since locked to the public, often in areas used heavily during the Blitz for shelter in 1940 to 41. None of these reports fit neatly into any theory. They do not feel like hallucinations or simple errors. They feel like fragments of time, slices of history replaying themselves, slipping through the cracks of the present. The deeper one looks into the underground's mysteries, the clearer a pattern becomes. The strange sightings concentrate in places with dense layers of history. Stations that sheltered thousands during the Blitz, tunnels dug by Victorian labourers, chambers once used as government bunkers, and sections now sealed and forgotten. It is as if the underground holds a memory of every moment, every emotion, every life that ever passed through it, and sometimes those memories blacked through. The London Underground is one of the oldest, largest, and most emotionally charged subterranean networks in the world. Over 250 miles of track and 272 stations, many operating continuously since 1863. It has witnessed fear and triumph, despair and survival. It has been a refuge, a workplace, a battleground, and a grave. Millions flowed through it for generations, leaving behind traces of themselves, whispers, shadows, echoes. So what are these encounters? Are they remnants of the past replaying themselves in the present? Are they electromagnetic anomalies? Are they moments where two timelines brush against each other? Or are they something we do not yet have the language to describe? The mystery remains unsolved, and perhaps that is why it endures. The underground continues to expand, trains continue to run, and the city above never stops moving. But beneath it, time feels less certain, less stable, less willing to stay in its own place. The past may not be gone at all. It may simply be waiting. And if the stories are true, if people really have glimpsed moments from other eras, then the London Underground is not just a network of tunnels. It is one of the world's most extraordinary timelines, layered beneath our feet, quietly holding the memories of a city that refuses to forget. What do you think happened in these tunnels? Are these echoes of history, scientific anomalies, or something far stranger? Share your thoughts below. And if you've ever experienced something unusual on the underground, your story might be the missing piece to one of London's oldest mysteries. Like the video if you enjoyed this journey into the depths of London's past. Comment your theory and subscribe for more untold stories from the world's hidden timelines. Because beneath the surface of ordinary life, some mysteries still wait in the dark.